And we're live.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 2 of Worldwide Wednesday podcast. I'm your host, Sovereign,
And I'm Shiny.
and today we're going to be presenting a bunch of topics for today. But first, I want to address a few things. For those coming in, as you can see, we've created our first logo based on the original sketch we had on the pilot episode, but now we have it fully digitalized. We think it looks very clean, and we all hope you like it. Another thing that I want to address is two of our videos making it into the double digits. Our Sora video and our episode or our video on Senator's Mansion and Cinema. Do you think we'd ever make it to double digits on our first episode?
Oh, definitely not. I was not expecting that in the slightest whatsoever. I was expecting us to reach double digits on Sora or Mansion, way later on down the line when, when people would retroactively watch our content, but I never thought it would happen now. That's for sure. I never thought of that. So I'm really happy to see it. I'm also happy to see all the love you guys are giving to the Facebook page. We already got 16 likes on the page, which is amazing. And also just really thankful that you guys are tuning in and listening. It's definitely great to see. And I'm really excited for us moving forward.
All right. Well, with introductions out of the way, I definitely think it's time to touch on our first segment.
Yes. So our first segment is going to be our review of Venom, Let There Be Carnage.
Now, before we begin, we will be diving into spoilers, and we will not let any room for there to be non-spoiler discussion. But before we start, I think we should address what our thoughts have been on the first Venom movie.
Okay. So my thoughts on the first Venom movie was that it was entertaining, but it was clunky. It seemed like they hadn't gotten their footing, and the fight scene was awful.
Honestly, I've got conflicting feelings about this movie. With the original Venom, it was straight up awful.
Yeah.
But for some reason, you enjoy watching it. I don't know. There's some form of charm to the movie that
Yeah.
you can't explain.
I mean, yeah, I think that's definitely because of Tom Hardy's performance as both Eddie Brock and as Venom. I think because of both their performance, I think because of his performance as both characters, that really sold the character.
Because at the very least, I think what people enjoy from watching the movie is the chemistry, and that pretty much translated pretty well to the second movie.
Yeah, it definitely translated well.
But I'm gonna reflect what you said earlier. Those fight scenes were dreadful.
Yeah.
Every single one. They lit it awfully. You could barely see, especially in the final fight with Venom and Riot.
Yeah.
You can't even tell the difference between the two in that fight because there's so much happening.
Yeah, and not only are there so much happening, the fact of the matter is that they're the same color. Riot and Venom are the same color, and in a CGI fight that is already chaotic, having two things that are rapidly moving with jump cuts that are the same color, yeah, no, that it just doesn't work. It just does not work, and it makes it just difficult to track the fight. So that was definitely a downside on Venom 1, which thankfully we can say in Venom 2, they definitely made the fight scenes a lot better.
Yeah. But moving on to Let There Be Carnage, it was definitely an improvement from the first movie. I mean, if you look at the Rotten Tomato score, it quite literally doubled.
Yeah. I mean, it is a good movie. For one, it's more compact and succinct. It's about 90 minutes, which is, I mean, for a superhero movie in the modern day, that's actually pretty rare.
Yeah.
Like a 90-minute runtime. But I think it worked well, as it just didn't allow the movie to just have too many lulls in it. It was like, we have a story to tell, we're going to go from point A to point B to point C, and after that, we're done. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's fair. If you don't have much to say in a story, don't force yourself to say too much. Just say what you gotta say and then end it.
Yeah, pretty much. Though I have a feeling that the pacing actually had a lot of it brought a lot of weird scenarios into the movie as a whole. For example, we see Eddie Brock's rise from nothing to stardom in his journalism, but we don't really see evidence of that aside from the movie just saying it to us. Like, we see him writing newspaper articles every now and again, but that's really it. We don't really see him like being successful in life, despite the fact that the movie tells us that's the case.
Yeah. Well, actually, I kind of took it as that his time now in the Daily Bugle is actually a lower point than where he was during
Was it
this.
the Daily Bugle?
Yeah, he's working for the Daily Bugle now because in the previous movie he had his own show, the Eddie Brock Show,
Right.
and this time he's now working for the Daily Bugle, and his really only claim to fame is that Cletus Cassidy wants to talk to him.
Which I don't even know. Well, I guess, yeah, they present newspapers to prisoners all the time. That's fine. And
Yeah.
it's easily explainable in movie logic. But I don't know. To see him, like, from having his own, like, branded TV show to him just writing newspaper articles, that's something that I think was a result of the fast pacing.
Yeah, I think it was also because they kind of they wanted to show that Eddie is he's still at a low point post Venom 1, but at the same time also just kind of like, yeah, he's at a low point, yeah, he's kind of a loser, but let's not think about that right now. Which I feel like they did that because they wanted to put the relationship between Eddie and Venom at front stage.
Which they pretty much did. Though I do also have problems with that, but um, because the first third of the movie, while it was mostly character interactions and it was all pretty good, that's pretty much all that happened, in my opinion. I, like, there were small moments where the plot was developing, but it was very incremental, and
I,
it was a very slow push.
I feel that in terms of the plot being progressed, I felt that whenever you saw Carnage and Shriek, the plot was moving
Oh, it
forward.
escalated after the two villains were introduced.
I would say every scene that you see either of them in, the plot is moving forward. It's just that when you flash back to Eddie, he's kind of like doing his own thing. He hasn't really caught up to what's going on. Like, for example, when Eddie gets when Carnage is broken out of prison and everyone's like losing their mind, Eddie's reaction to it is kind of like very muted.
Right.
Like, he's obviously worried that like a symbiote potentially is out there, but he isn't like proactive about it, which I found a little weird. But at the same time, I can also just see why they wanted to focus more on Carnage moving the plot,
Right.
because Carnage he's literally portrayed as like a force of nature. I mean, he literally creates a tornado in the prison.
Yeah. Which that scene alone was enough to show how much of a threat Carnage was.
Yeah.
But I also want to touch on the villains because Venom's the original Venom movie, that villain was straight up terrible.
Yeah, he was just
Look at me, I'm super egotistical and own a business. Like, we have never seen that before.
Yeah, he was like, I'm an evil businessman. You should clap now.
But this time I'm possessed by an alien.
Yeah, which was just really dumb. But with Carnage and Shriek, there was actual, like, good reason that they're villains. Like, for one, Carnage is a psychopath. Cletus Cassidy is a serial killer who has not just killed numerous innocent people, he killed his abusive parents, he killed his abusive grandmother, he was sent to an orphanage where the only person he connected to was taken away from him.
Yeah.
Like, he has a good reason. And
I think Cletus got plenty of screen time, though I might not say the same for Shriek at all.
I feel like
once she was introduced like into the main plot,
yeah,
like once she connected with Cletus,
mm-hmm.
From that point, like, I wish I saw more of her, honestly, but she was just, a woman sidekick.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we should have seen a bit more as to why she is deranged because like I feel like it's understandable when she's in captivity why she's probably crazy and would go out murdering people, but I wish we saw like given a bit of her backstory as to why she was sent to St. Estes alongside Cletus
Yeah.
to like explain why she potentially is such a violent person. Because I mean, we got it a lot for why like Cletus is so crazy, but we don't really get it for her. And I kind of wish we did.
Yeah, overall, her character was underdeveloped, and I wish I saw more of it because together they were a pretty, like, substantive duo.
Yeah, I would say that her and Cletus had more chemistry together as a duo than Cletus and Carnage did.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it really didn't show the connection between the two, which, I mean, until it was brought up as, like, the big weakness they need to exploit in the movie.
Yeah, which I mean, they did try to set up early on for when she uses her shriek next to the helicopter to get it down, and he like tells her he doesn't like sound. But outside of that, I felt like maybe they could have done a little bit more.
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of the scenes where they focused a bit too much on Eddie by himself, just kind of not doing much. I feel they could have worked towards Shriek and Carnage.
yeah, because at this point we're pretty much familiar with Eddie and Venom as characters and their relationship together, but aside from them two, seeing more of Shriek and Cletus would have been a lot better.
Yeah. What did you think about the side characters, Detective Mulligan, Anne, and Dan, and Miss Chen?
I think uh I'm gonna be honest, I don't like how the movie handled Detective Mulligan. I really don't. Like they set him up to be like the the asshole detective, and
Yeah.
it, I don't really like it because I mean his investigation had a lot of warrant,
hmm
and I don't know, especially when like he's just doing his job.
Yeah, I feel like they didn't give us a substantial reason as to why he's should be like so dickish to Eddie. Like, I feel like there should have been a point in the movie where like him and Eddie are cordial, and then like maybe Eddie is like having the flare up with Cletus in the prison causes him to sour a bit on Eddie.
Right. Like
Because like
the movie wanted us to hate him, but I didn't feel a reason to.
I don't think they wanted us to hate him. I think
Like
they wanted us to
well, it's more
see
like
him as an obstacle.
yeah, like I don't know. The movie didn't exactly portray that really well. I think Mrs. Chen's role was a lot better, though, I will
Oh
say.
yeah, she was hilarious.
And
Where
then
she was taken over by Venom, and she's just doing the regular store stuff, just waiting for someone that she knows to come in.
yeah, and then Dan, huh. See, I don't really have much of an opinion on him. I'm gonna be honest, because he's just there and you miss it, and he shows up for one part in the final fight scene, and I guess that's a payoff for his character. I don't have much else to say on
Yeah,
that.
Dan is just he's kind of just like, I'm here because my fiance got stolen, and her ex boyfriend is the only one that can save her, so I'm helping.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I felt was really good. Um, I do. It's kind of weird where I feel like sometimes the movie wants us to think that potentially her and Eddie could have something again, but then you just look at Eddie compared to Dan, and on the whole, Dan is just a much more stable person.
like you really have no reason to think that she would be happier with Eddie.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
that's even evident in the first movie too.
yeah, but especially in this movie where like Eddie's apartment is just a complete wreck. He has chickens, like there's holes in the ceiling. Like I feel like while you're supposed to somewhat feel like, oh yeah, Eddie and Venom will eventually get Anne, you sit there and you're like, Anne has no reason to ever go back to Eddie, as he is shown to be unstable and capable of great destruction by himself, not factoring the symbiote. And
Yeah,
then you add Venom to the mix, and meanwhile you got Dan who has a good job and treats her right and didn't get her fired from her job by leaking all of her papers.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Um, One thing that I liked was just the over the top craziness. Now, I know you have thoughts about this scene, but the scene of Carnage
Uh,
hacking into the internet, I loved.
I cannot agree with you on that. I am sorry. Just seeing Carnage just put his tendrils into the USB ports and charging ports and all of that, and then somehow hacking into a government database. Like, you saw me like waving my hands at the screen in anger
Yeah.
because that scene just, I did not like it, because it was just like, I know we're comic book fans and we have to suspend our disbelief a little bit, but that's a bit too far for me. I'm sorry. You
I liked it just because it was a funny homage to a real comic book thing because in the comics Carnage can do that. He actually does it so he can kill a bunch of gamers by like going through the computer and somehow coming out and like killing them through their mics.
okay?
It,
Okay, I can more believe that he can extend his tendrils maybe a few miles through wires or something, and then
no,
killing,
he was doing it through a laptop.
like, yeah, doing it. Okay.
It was just it's just as ridiculous. And while he was doing that, he was still hacking stuff.
I,
Carnage being a master hacker is just a thing in the comics, and they ran with it. They're like, how are we going to get Cletus to find where Barrison is? Well, I mean, Carnage in the comics can hack things, and they didn't have to explain that. I guess we'll just do it.
Well, even if it happened in the comics, I still don't like
Yeah,
it. I still can't
I
defend that
thought it
scene.
was hilarious just seeing it and seeing your reaction to it in the theaters. I was like, how much do you want to bet that this is not because this is not an original idea of theirs, and this is directly from some comic book issue?
Even if it happened in the comics, I wouldn't like it.
Oh my god!
I'm just gonna leave it at that, because that scene, I really hated it.
Oh my god! I thought it was hilarious. But the other scene that I really liked was the overall final battle in the church.
Yeah, I I I wouldn't say it was reincorporated from the original Spider-Man 3, but I mean, it was a clever setting for the fight to take place, because I mean,
It's actually a reference to an older Spider-Man video game where the final boss is Carnage in a church.
mm,
And
yeah,
also there's I forgot the name of the series, but there is a series where Carnage has a bunch of homeless people and he creates a cult of murderers and their base of operations is inside of a church.
yeah. And the reason I say it's a clever setting is because, of course, you use the church bell
Yeah.
as like a weakness for you to exploit. But at the same time, what the uniqueness in this movie is that not only does it affect Carnage, but it also affects Venom.
Yeah.
So it makes for an interesting fight scene.
Yeah. I really liked when Venom recreated the Leonardo da Vinci Anatomy of Man photo in front of the stained glass window. I thought that was really cool. But yeah, the fight was really good. It really showed that like while Carnage by himself is stronger than Venom, Venom and Eddie are just a better team.
Yeah,
Like,
and it was like, yeah, there were elements of it hinted, but I think the final fight, like exploiting that, I think it was handled very well.
yeah. Um so I also I really wish we saw at what point in the movie Carnage got some of his symbiote self inside of Detective Mulligan.
Yeah,
Because like I knew from the very beginning, the moment that they captured him, that they're setting up Toxin, who in the comics is considered the most powerful symbiote, more powerful than Venom and Carnage, and he's a superhero. Like Detective Mulligan teaches him to actually fight for good and not be evil or a monster, and he's like I think Toxin is like the 1,000th symbiote that was born, and thus it's like extremely special that and it's like resistant to fire,
huh?
and so like Toxin's supposed to be like uber strong, and so I know they're probably setting that up, but I really wish we saw like how he got inside of him.
Yeah, because pretty much all in the fight alone, he was pretty much just captured, and then Shriek took care of him for a bit.
Yeah, Shriek tried to hang him, and he I don't even know how he was stopped from being hung. I think just the fight just created enough chaos for him to just get dropped on a floorboard.
Yeah, but overall, this movie definitely was an improvement from the original.
Yeah. What
Yeah,
would you give it out of 10?
6.
Yeah, I'd give it about a 6 out of 10.
Yeah,
Better than the original, very entertaining, but still has a lot
yeah,
a
because
lot to work
it
on.
left out a lot to and I think that's mostly a detriment because of its pacing.
Yeah.
Like I at first I appreciated the pacing, but the more you analyze it,
The
it's
more you think maybe they could have done more with it.
yeah. But then that goes into how comic book movies are in the modern era, where they're super long
Yeah.
when they don't need to be. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a balance you have to weigh, and it's pretty difficult
Yeah.
nowadays.
Okay, but before we finish, we have to talk about the post credits scene.
Which before we begin, if any of you have not seen the post-credit scene, please be aware that there are massive spoilers ahead. And you may think you won't care, but once you hear it, you, it's pretty big. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so here's your spoiler warning. Three, two, one. Okay.
So
Venom gets sent to the MCU. Him and Eddie get Doctor Strange straight over into the Marvel Cinematic Universe right around the time Far From Home is beginning.
right, or I think it would be right after Far From Home is ending, or No Way Home is
Yeah,
beginning.
it's from No Way Home's. Oh crap! I have the God 2 minute words. Ending of Far From Home, beginning of No Way Home.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, because right when he gets like the world shifting around him and he gets teleported, or not teleported, but moved from one universe to another,
Yeah.
it in front of him appears the screen with the Daily Bugle report we
Yeah.
saw at the ending of Far From Home.
Which actually, the more that I think about it, Venom getting sent over is actually probably towards the middle of the movie. As according to the trailers we see, Peter gets exposed. Then there's the lawyer. Then there's the scene of him in court and all of that stuff. And then later on, we see that he is visiting Doctor Strange.
Yeah,
So Venom is probably showing up like the latter half of the first third of the movie is when he probably gets dropped into the MCU.
probably. Which leads me to think: will we see him in No Way Home?
I think he's going to be a post credit scene.
I think so, because we already saw like discussion of who's going to be the main villains
Yeah,
of that movie.
yeah, we know it's going to be Green Goblin, Doc Ock, Electro, Sandman, Lizard, and most likely Rhino. People are like, "Oh my God, who's the mysterious sixth character?" I don't think they're intentionally hiding who the sixth character is. I just think that the scenes that are going to involve Rhino are probably going to be like a little too big to show in a trailer.
Right.
But I don't think it's because the sixth villain is someone special. Like some people are saying Mysterio, some people are saying it's Scorpion because Matt Gargan's still in prison. Some say the Vulture's going to return. I think it's just going to be Rhino. I think we're going to get 3 from the Tobey Maguire era and 3 from the Andrew Garfield era.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't know. It seems a bit like Venom isn't portrayed in this series as a villainous entity at all,
Yeah.
and so
I don't think he would join the Sinister Six because, I mean,
or even be an antagonist in the future. Honestly,
I think he would be more like in a Venom 3, Spider Man 4, whichever one they do, he'd probably be someone that Peter fights, but then once they come to an understanding, they're chill.
honestly, I think they might have like um in the Netflix Marvel TV shows. I think they might share like a Daredevil Punisher type of
Relationship?
relationship. Yeah,
Yeah.
where they're hostile towards each other, but at the end of the day, they work together. I
Yeah.
feel like that's what it's leading up to
Yeah.
because you really can't change Venom into a villain.
Yeah. I mean, there is a comic series called the Lethal Protector, which is what Venom named himself in Let There Be Carnage. But in the Lethal Protector series, it's actually Venom and Spider-Man teaming up and fighting crime together. So I imagine that they're probably setting up that as part of like what Venom 3 is. Like I can see Venom like it's like Venom, Lethal Protectors as like the title or something.
Right, right. So I don't think he'll ever be an antagonist when he comes into his own full in the MCU,
Yeah.
which also leads us to a discussion of the other Sony feature in production, Morbius, which at this point, due to how the Sonyverse is pretty much has transitioned into the MCU, we can say that even though Morbius is exclusively done by Sony, I think they're now collaborating with Marvel Studios, and we'll probably see it in the MCU.
Yeah, so previously I wasn't sure, but then the movie got delayed due to COVID, and then I imagine it probably got reworked to fit with all this multiverse stuff.
Yeah,
And since we already know that Michael Keaton's returning as the Vulture in Morbius, I'm fairly confident that it's just going to straight up be set in the MCU.
yeah,
I feel like they're just gonna. I feel like prior it was in its nebulous area of is it not? But I think now they're just gonna
because
firmly say it's the MCU.
the trailer came out like almost over a year ago at this point,
Yeah,
and Michael Keaton's appearance in the trailer was super confusing to a lot of people because really Venom's place as a franchise wasn't really known, mostly
yeah.
because it's a solo property. And then now with the post-credit scene that we got in Let There Be Carnage, I think we can speculate a little more that Morbius will in fact take place in the MCU,
Oh yeah, I definitely think so. Um, other
which leads me to think: is this its aesthetic? Will its aesthetic be kind of jarring if it's set in the MCU? Because both Venom and Morbius are like their designs and just how the movies are lit is very, very different from how MCU movies are. Which I mean, I appreciate the variety, but will it be jarring to some audiences?
it honestly, I don't think so. Just because I mean, with Morbius, it's vampires. It's a vampire movie. So I feel like it's gonna fit more with the vampire aesthetic, so it won't throw people off.
Yeah,
And I think Marvel is also going to adopt that because I mean, there's rumors that Ghost Rider is going to return in a series, or they're going to do the Midnight Suns as a series, which would tonally fit that type of
yeah.
style.
Then again, with Multiverse of Madness hinting at a more horror-esque type of movie, I think that they are going to try to aim for more variety, which I think the in the last 10 years it's kind of been lacking, with the exception of like Guardians of the Galaxy and Ragnarok.
Yeah. So I definitely think that moving forward, Morbius is definitely going to just be a part of the MCU.
Yeah. But I'm wondering, because going back to what I said about the aesthetics being entirely different,
Mhm.
will it be weird for people to see both Tom Holland and Venom in the same scene? Because I mean,
I don't think so. I think some people from the very beginning have wanted to see that. At least most casual people have wanted to see Tom Holland with Tom Hardy.
yeah,
I feel like most people wanted to see it. So I think that when it happens on screen, it's going to be like a big scene. It's going to be like, oh my God, they finally met.
oh my God,
Because
we're gonna have more Toms. We already have enough Chris's in the MCU as is.
we have the same amount of Toms now. Tom Hiddleston, Tom Hardy, Tom Holland.
Oh, it never ends.
Oh God, and they all have H's. Tom. Oh God, they're all British and they have H's in their names.
Oh God,
Jeez.
don't even bring up the fact that Tom Hardy is British, because considering he plays it like an urban American,
Yeah. Um.
so it's kind of jarring.
Yeah.
So
So part of our Marvel discussion though. What did you think about the Agatha Harkness Disney Plus show being announced?
I mean, honestly, her character was amazing in Wanda Vision, and so I'm looking forward to it. Honestly,
Yeah.
especially with the first half of WandaVision being really good. I definitely want to see more, and I also want to see more because the last half was not that great.
Yeah. I definitely think she had an unfair punishment in being relegated to just a mind slave in Westview. I thought that was far too extreme. So I really hope we get to see her, at least by the end of her first season of that show, she gets out of that mind prison.
Yeah,
Because I think Agatha would be a great character to see
unless
moving
it's a
forward.
unless it's a prequel to set up for another villain in a separate movie, which could also happen.
I mean, it probably could tie into maybe like vampires, maybe explaining giving more context to what will happen to Morbius in his movie.
Yeah, that's definitely possible.
Yeah. And so along the lines of the Agatha Harkness TV show, the person that leaked that, which it ended up becoming true and being confirmed as official by Marvel, also said that we're gonna get a Monica Rambeau's show and a Jai Ling show. What do you
Hmm.
think about the prospect of those two?
See, for Monica, it's weird mostly because we know we're getting Captain Marvel 2 plus the Marvels TV show. So,
You mean Miss Marvel and the Marvels movies?
right. So they changed those names recently, so I'm a
Yeah,
little thrown off there. But seeing that character more would be pretty interesting, mostly because we were introduced it in Captain Marvel 1.
yeah.
So it could be interesting for Jai Ling with her inclusion or with her character originating in Shang-Chi. I think it would be pretty interesting.
I just want to see more of Ronnie Chang's character, just because the prospect of Ronnie Chang of The Daily Show playing the left hand to this gigantic terrorist organization just sounds way too funny to be real.
Yeah, the fact that she still is in, or like the Ten Rings is still existent is that was kind of a weird cutscene for me because I'm like yeah, it's in character, but I don't like it. But at the same time, I do like it because it could lead to a lot of interesting storylines in the future.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think for sure we're probably going to see Razorfish show up in a lot more.
I forget that he has an official like comic name.
Yeah, his name is just Razorfist.
Like the only evidence we saw of it was just, oh, that's my car, and it had Razor Fist and graffiti. Like that
Yeah,
was the only like,
yep.
because like they didn't use like a code name or like this is what I call myself.
No,
No, it's just that's my car.
yeah, it's Razorfist. So I think we're going to see Razorfist. I also think we're probably going to see more of the Black Widows that were liberated
Yeah,
during the events of Black Widow, because we saw one fighting an extremist soldier during Shang-Chi, during the Underground Fight Club.
hmm.
So I think the new Ten Rings that Jai Ling leads will probably be her recruiting like different like factions that are like have crumbled over the years.
Yeah. Oh, now you've got me thinking about what Abomination is doing right now.
Probably still sitting in the raft getting private training lessons by Wong.
I still have so many questions about that scene in Shang-Chi, but I'm glad I was in there.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's good to get him back in the public eye because he is going to show up in She-Hulk. And I think because what that movie came out in what 2009, 2010, the original Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
Yeah, it's been well over a decade since Abomination has been in any of the movies. So I think it was good to at least show him, be like, here he is. We didn't forget about him. He's still relevant. He's gonna show up in other stuff. So please don't forget Abomination.
Yeah, but to wrap up everything, I think Venom 2 is definitely set up a lot for the MCU, despite the fact that literally the last 2 minutes were the only parts establishing it in the MCU.
Mhm.
But as a movie on its own, I thoroughly enjoyed
Yeah.
it.
I actually have one other question. Do you think? Because just how we're seeing that the Spider-Man villains are crossing over and they come right before they die. Like they're the characters that come right before their deaths in their respective movie. What do you think the prospect of Riot, Carnage, and Shriek getting the same treatment? Because
I can only see Toxin coming over.
I think potentially,
Just because like they had a scene where there's like, oh, he has a symbiote, but well,
I
see,
think
that's if
yeah,
that would be really tough to juggle because at this point we're probably dealing with two symbiotes as is. To have four symbiotes come over, I think that's a lot to handle.
I mean potentially, but I also think they may do it because Andy Serkis, when asked about it, he said who said Venom was the only one that came over? Which to me, I think implies at least some characters are coming over. My personal dream is that Riot, Shriek, Carnage, and Dan, Mrs. Chen, uh, Detective Mulligan, Eddie, and Venom, I think all of them should just come over as they're pretty much the only people that matter.
Right.
So leave that desolate wasteland of a universe, come to the MCU, and I honestly think that if we do have them all cross over, it could work because we know in Thor Love and Thunder, Thor's fighting Gore the God Butcher. And in the comics, Gore uses All Black the Necro Sword, which is related to the symbiote, specifically the symbiote god Null.
Hmm.
So potentially they may go in a direction where they want to do something with Null, and that would explain bringing over all the symbiotes.
Okay. Yeah, now you've got me thinking of a what if episode where the symbiotes take over, and I would absolutely love that. So
Yeah.
now you've got me on that
Yeah, I honestly think potentially that would be really cool to see because there's a whole aspect of the multiverse that involves Spider-Man. Like it's the web of something run by the character Madam Web, which is like it's like a gigantic spider web that is the multiverse, and each thread of the spider web leads to like a different universe in the multiverse. And since Sony's crossing over, we're getting all these, probably getting all these Sony characters coming over, and we're dealing with the multiverse. I could honestly see that they may take the Spider-Man aspects of the multiverse and fuse it with the symbiotes, because Venom did say millions of light years worth of knowledge across universes. I'm thinking potentially that they're mixing the Madame Web types of characteristics that you see in the multiverse from the comics and mixing it with Null. And that will play a part in the multiverse saga.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
This
that,
was a really long segment, but we had a lot to talk about.
yeah, definitely. Definitely. Marvel is something that the both of us are very passionate about, so we
Yeah.
definitely have a lot to say.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't even gotten to the other Sony Marvel properties that are coming out, like Black Cat and Spider Woman potentially.
All
So
right, we got to
we gotta save that for.
we
We'll
gotta
save
finish it
that when
there.
we get more information. But overall, Venom 6 out of 10. Better than the original Venom. Definitely work that could be done, but hopefully with the characters coming over to the MCU and getting access to hopefully like Marvel's like resources, we'll get a better Venom 3.
Nice.
So yeah. Anyways, our next segment is gonna be on excuse me, the recent Dragon Ball superhero movie, the recent trailer that came out. So, what are your thoughts about it?
Well, given that we know so little about the movie and that it's only a minute long, there's very like small stuff that we can talk about, like getting into the nitty gritty. For example, you literally have to do this frame by frame in order to notice it because he's literally around for 3 frames. But we see Broly in this movie,
Yeah.
which
What?
is big.
Yeah, I mean that's a huge surprise. A lot of people were like, "I really hope Broly like shows back up," but then we had basically like an arc, like basically 2 arcs go by within the manga, and Broly is only referenced in what 2 bonus panels throughout
Yeah,
the entirety of the manga between the Galactic Patrol Prisoner arc and the Granola the Survivor arc. So some people were really losing hope that Broly would ever return, but thankfully we see him, and it looks like he's sparring with Goku and probably Vegeta on Beerus' planet.
yeah.
So that at least shows that maybe Broly will not only just improve as a fighter. Do you think he'll get access to like God Key? Maybe not in the movie, but moving forward.
See, I don't see that happening. I think he's gonna like with him, the character approach is gonna be more like with Gohan, where like they branch out into separate ways of attaining power.
Hmm.
I think that like Broly will stay on the route that he's in, where like, oh, he's the legendary Super Saiyan, while not being explicitly said in like the Super movie. We all know it.
Hmm.
So I have a feeling that they're not going to hint at him having God Key, but the path he's on with his power is close enough to where Goku and Vegeta are that he'll be able to keep up with them.
The reason I bring up God Key is because there was this 4D event that happened several years ago in Japan where
Right, where
Broly God, where it's just a random Broly with a legendary Super Saiyan God or whatever it was, just shows up and fights Goku and Vegeta, and Goku fuses with the audience and defeats Broly. So
I
I was like,
I
that was so ludicrous. What if they just make it make sense?
as I remember what you're talking about, and I mean they just gave Broly longer hair, and it's like, and it wasn't even Super Broly, it was Z Broly.
Yeah, I mean, Super Broly didn't exist back then, but what if? What if they actually do that? I don't think it would take place within the movie itself, but what if that's maybe what they're going with?
See, outside of the canon, usually Dragon Ball doesn't like to pull from things like games and specials and all that. So it would be cool, but I doubt it will happen.
Maybe, maybe. What's your response to all the rumors that potentially Broly and Chilai have a kid that's
It's
going to show up in the movie?
I have not heard of this. This is a new one to me.
Okay, so if you've been around the block on the Konzentu forums, there is a meme that is now being taken semi-seriously that Broly and Chilai have a kid together, and that the kid is going to be part of this next generation of Z fighters with Goten, Trunks, Marin, Pan, Bola, Oob.
See, I'm reluctant to take it seriously, mostly because we do have Pan in as a focus in the trailer.
Yeah.
So I'm reluctant to say it.
No, not that he'd be a main character, but just the existence of
No,
a Broly
no,
kid.
it's not happening. I refuse to say that it will happen.
Honestly, I think it's not going to happen. I did see one answer that I kind of do want to see happen, that we think it's Broly and Chilai's kid, but plot twist, it's Limo and Chilai's kid. It just looks nothing like Broly. Like, I don't think they're going to do that because Dragon Ball is not known to bring up anything related to shipping. It's like, character marries X character, they get married, have kids, end of story.
Like it's like, oh, they're using it for food or for housing. Like that's pretty much the extent. Like Dragon Ball really isn't known for like sticking to romance, with the exception of Gohan and Videl.
And even then, it was kind of like, I like you. I like you too. Want to go to this tournament? Yeah, sure. Watch his girlfriend get the absolute tar beaten out of her.
Oh god, that was definitely the most brutal fight in the entire franchise.
One of, definitely. Is probably on par with Frieza's beatdown of Vegeta and Goku, for that matter, in the original Z.
True, yeah.
Um,
But going back, I do want to touch on the appearance of the Red Ribbon Army
yes.
in the trailer.
So, we haven't seen the Red Ribbon Army in canon since the Android saga back in, what, the mid-90s?
Yeah.
Yeah. So seeing them return, I mean, obviously we saw a non-canon version of them show up with Android 21 and Dragon Ball Fighters.
Right.
But yeah, they're back again, and it looks like they're still making androids.
Which it's weird because the trailer focuses on these two short guys, and it's like, so these are going to be the leaders of the Red Ribbon Army. Like the trailer implies that that's the case.
Yeah,
And it's like, it's interesting. Like the the world's strongest, or the multiverse's strongest Saiyan has to contend with two short criminal masterminds.
I'm
Like,
pretty sure one of them is actually a kid, like a legitimate child.
yeah, which it'll be interesting. Like maybe it'll take some focus away from Goku and Vegeta and let some other characters shine, because we also did see some shots of Piccolo,
Yeah,
which, though we do know how he's treated in movies.
yeah. I will say that the producers said to look out for the driver. The driver of the car carrying the two leaders. They said look out for him.
Hmm.
So I don't know. The big thing that I'm thinking about with these new characters is, it's like, this isn't original or anything. This has been pointed out already, but the kid looks like XS Cash from the Bio Broly movie.
Hmm.
He looks like just like a smaller version of that character.
Which if they happen to reincorporate a character that we haven't like
I mean,
seen in a long
li-
time and
I mean,
don't even care about, that would be
most
pretty.
people don't even know the name XS Cash. That's how irrelevant this character is.
Yeah,
It is literally for Bio Broly, which, by the way, I think is one of the most hated movie of the original 13 Dragon Ball movies.
yeah, not a. n- See, my opinion is that Second Coming is actually worse, but let's save that for another day.
Yeah. Wait. Oh, wait. No, I'm wrong. His name isn't even XS Cash. That's wrong. This is how irrelevant he is that the actual character that we're thinking of isn't his name either. Oh God. What is his name? What is the name of this random guy?
I'm not willing to put any more brain power into trying to figure that out. Let's keep
Uh,
it moving.
I have to see. I have to see. Oh, Lord Jaguar. That's his name. Lord Jaguar. He's so irrelevant, but yes, he looks like Lord Jaguar. Sorry.
Yeah, and then one thing I also wanted to touch on was the fact that the leaders of the Red Ribbon Army know of the existence of Goku, Vegeta, and Boo.
Yeah. That I find
Because,
at first I thought that's weird, but then I remember that at this point Boo was kind of public knowledge as just Mr. Satan's friend.
right,
There's just not the thing that the thing that concerns me though is that they acknowledge him as a strong opponent.
right. I mean, to most people, I mean, like, in the public, like, Boo is considered, like, under him, so,
Yeah, but I don't think people even acknowledge that he's a fighter per se. I mean, the only time Boo is acknowledged by the general Dragon Ball public as a fighter post Boo arc is in GT.
yeah, where he's like, oh, he does all the fights up until the finale and then fakes the loss.
Yeah,
So,
which by the way is probably one of the greatest grifts that we've ever seen in anime. Like the straight up just the greatest grift ever.
yeah, yeah, and we're not even. That's but all in all, the trailer had a lot, despite the fact that it was less than a minute long.
Yeah, they only showed Gamma 2. They didn't really show Gamma 1 until the very end, where he's
Oh,
doing like the Great Saiyaman pose.
oh, you're talking about the two, the other two original characters that they've
Yeah,
got.
yeah.
Yeah,
Gamma 2, he's the one with like the two fins on his head, and like he has like a ray gun, and it looks like he's attacking Piccolo. We see a decent amount of him, and the producer said to look out for him, but Gamma 1 was kind of in the background for most of it. We only really see him in like the ending scene.
right, right. Well, we don't know a lot about them, so I'm definitely looking forward to learning more about them.
Mhm.
I will say the greatest takeaway from this is like thinking of the Red Ribbon Army as like the Hydra of the Dragon Ball universe, where you
Oh
keep
god.
cutting off their heads and just it keeps popping up.
Except they're a more ridiculous version of Hydra. One thing that I've seen tossed around is potentially that these are like alien androids or something. I think they're androids because we do see like the same pods that Dr. Gero used next to Gamma 1. But some people are thinking potentially that they're androids created by the Red Ribbon Army to pose as superheroes. And they're going to try to defeat Goku and Vegeta and all of them to expose them as villains, as a way to potentially rehabilitate the Red Ribbon Army's image.
Hmm.
Which I think is plausible, because one is called Dragon Ball Super Superhero, but two, the guy that's running it, the kid that looks like Lord Jaguar, is a kid. Kids like superheroes.
Yeah,
And I mean, in universe for the Dragon Ball, in universe for Dragon Ball, the Great Saiyaman is like an icon across the planet. Like superheroes are very well known. I mean, even within Dragon Ball Super, like there's a Great Saiyaman movie, and like Gohan has literal like fangirls like trying to like kiss him and stuff. So I think they may. I think it actually is that Gamma 1 and Gamma 2 are androids programmed to be superheroes
hmm.
because that's what's popular in Dragon
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, that definitely could be possible and would be interesting because aside from that, they really can't contend with the Z fighters at all because they're just a criminal organization. One that Goku took out twice, once as a child, and so it really leads me to think like, what could they possibly do?
Yeah, I'm thinking they're probably gonna go after like their reputation. Because I mean, think about it. They target Piccolo, for example. To the general public, Piccolo is only known as the Demon King Piccolo.
Which maybe not even because like nobody remembers him. Like I mean, it could probably be brought up that his father was the Demon King like 30, 40 years ago, and
I think they may just straight up just say that is the Demon King Piccolo,
well, it's also weird because one, because Piccolo he fought as Piccolo Jr. back in the end of Dragon Ball, so
but it wasn't filmed.
that is pretty.
It
That's
wasn't filmed, and remember, despite Goku winning that, he is not recognized as a martial arts like genius come the Cell games or post Cell games even.
yeah, because Piccolo, even though he took part in the World's Martial Arts Tournament in the Boost saga, he was only recognized by the announcer, and that's it.
Yeah. So it's quite possibly they could get away with saying like this is the Demon King Piccolo. Look at who Mr. Satan is hiding. He's hiding demons among us. Or they may point to Vegeta and say, "Look at him. Remember when West City got destroyed 30 years ago? That was him." Or they'll look at
Yeah,
Goku and be like, "He's just like Vegeta too."
yeah,
Because I
yeah.
mean, technically the Red Ribbon Army does have access to all that information.
That is fairly true. And really, the Z Fighters don't really take a public like appearance at all. Like they're not well known aside from the fact that oh, uh, Bulma, the CEO of Capsule Corp, has a husband.
Yeah,
That's
like Vegeta's a literal trophy husband. Like if we go along like their occupations and how popular they are, Goku is a radish farmer that's only popular around the Mount Paz area
yeah.
because he's notoriously good at being a radish farmer. Krillin's just a police officer who is probably just known as just a regular officer in his city.
Tien has his own
Dojo, but it's in the middle of the mountains.
so he's not well known.
Yamcha's the only one that's a legitimate celebrity because he's a famous baseball player
Yeah. And then Piccolo just meditates in the waterfalls.
by
So
his house. And I mean, Gohan is a professor and a scholar, but no, I mean, and he's also the Great Saiyaman, so there's that.
which
And he's also married to Videl.
who is the daughter of the greatest fighter, air quotes.
So, I mean, yeah, and then,
So really, the only ones with a public image are like Yamcha and Gohan and Vegeta, and that's minuscule at that.
yeah, Vegeta. I don't even think people know what Vegeta's name is. They just see him as that trophy husband.
Yeah,
Like, Vegeta is literally living the life with basically a sugar mama.
which
She,
that,
she creates his gravity chambers and
which I mean, probably a more peaceful life than a prince of a warrior race. So
yeah, and I mean he's fine being a dad. I mean, I was rereading the manga, and he like he knows how to change diapers. I mean, think about that. A Saiyan knowing how to change diapers. Do you think Goku know how to change Gohan or Goten's diapers?
I mean, I was about to say that Saiyans don't raise their own kids, but we go back to the Broly movie, and that's easily contradicted.
Well, they do raise their kids, but let's be honest here. I don't think Bardock or Gine know how to put on a diaper either.
That's that is a good point.
So yeah, overall, I am looking forward to this movie. What did you think of the animation style? That's the other
So a lot of people have a lot of hesitancy when it comes to the 3D animation,
thing.
and
Mhm.
I fall in this camp. I think with how big Dragon Ball is as a whole, I think they can pull it off, and I really liked how it looked,
Yeah, I did like.
especially because
Mhm.
they have experience in it. A lot of the scenes in Broly were 3D animated.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they had the unique, like, original art style, but a lot of the fight scenes were done in 3D, and there were only like two that I can think of that were a little jarring. So I think they can pull it off because they have the experience to do it.
Yeah, I agree. It does look a little video gamey, but I think overall the finished product is going to look good. I mean, at this point, they've been using CGI in Dragon Ball films since Battle of Gods back in like 2013.
Yeah,
So at this point, it shouldn't be something that's new to us for Dragon Ball movies.
yeah. Though I will say I don't want it happening if we have a second season of Dragon Ball Super.
I doubt they're going to do it for a full season of
Yeah,
Dragon Ball because that's way too expensive. And we know Toei and Funimation are cheap. I
yeah,
mean, look at the original run of Dragon Ball Super. Dear God, they are cheap.
yeah. Overall, very happy with what we saw in the New York Comic Con panel, and I'm very excited to learn more.
Yeah, I really like the design of Korin and Dende, their new modern designs.
Yeah.
So that was really good. And overall, I'm excited for this movie. I'm excited to see where these androids are going with this. I'm excited to see Broly again. So I'm definitely gonna watch it. I mean, of course I'm gonna watch it a bit. I'm a fan of Dragon Ball
I
for
mean,
like decades.
yeah.
Okay. Um, Switching gears, we need to talk about Superman.
Oh, yeah. Did you guys hear? Superman has come out as bisexual, and a lot of people are freaking out about it.
Yeah, because
So,
people only know how to read headlines and they don't actually, look at anything else.
so for context, uh,
Super, yeah.
Superman, the Superman in the comics, John Kent, which is the son of Clark Kent, aka Kal-El, he's going to be coming out as bisexual. Has the issue come out yet?
No,
So
they only announced that it's going to be happening within his series, which right now is actually really popular.
yeah, because a lot of the a lot of the discourse has circulated around, oh, they're only doing it because coming out day is coming up, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Is it pandering? Yes. But my retort to that is also, so what if it's pandering? Bisexual people still need exposure. And yeah, I mean, is it pandering? Yeah, but at the same time, who's it hurting? Is
yeah.
anyone really hurt by Superman being a bisexual character?
So here's the thing: is like people who have these criticisms are like, oh, instead of putting effort into making it woke, they should focus on the writing. They should focus on the story when it literally takes like 2 seconds of effort to change a character's sexuality in a story.
Yeah, and it also feels like when people,
So it's such a awful criticism that doesn't have any standing whatsoever. And
yeah, normally the people that usually levy those criticisms, they're like to say, well, like a character needs to, like they kind of argue that a character needs to earn their like gayness or their minority status when that's never applied to white or straight characters.
right,
Like no one questions why Bruce Wayne is straight. He just is. That's fine. So in the same deal, John Kent comes out as bisexual. We shouldn't really question that. He's not even the first bisexual like character in DC. We have Harley Quinn. We have Tim Drake. I mean, and he's not even the first LGBT character either, because what? We have Aqualad. We have Alan Scott Green Lantern. We have Apollo and Midnighter. Like, we have LGBT representation in comics. And while, yeah, people were like, oh my god, politics in our comics, no one talks about them anymore. No one talks about their queerness anymore because guess what? It doesn't really matter. It's just a nice thing for people who are in those groups because it's someone they can identify with. It doesn't change anything fundamental about their characters because, surprise, surprise, being X sexuality doesn't define anyone.
yeah. And the funniest part is that this got a Fox News segment.
Oh god.
This is this has sparked so much discourse that it has a Fox News segment.
It's only a matter of time before Tucker Carlson starts just screaming about how the left and the woke are ruining our children. They're trying to turn us gay, and then he'll somehow turn this into some white genocide.
Like they care so much about this, and it ultimately amounts to what?
Yeah. Yeah, Superboy, not Superboy. He's no longer Superboy. He's Superman now. But what? Superman is gonna have a relationship with his roommate Jay. Okay. How long before Jay doesn't show up in another issue, or worse, before he just gets fringed?
Yeah.
I mean, remember, it was only recent that Dan DiDio was the editor, like the head editor in charge in Marvel, not Marvel, at DC, and he straight up said, "Oh yeah, superheroes can't have happiness," which is why Batman and Catwoman didn't get married despite one full year of character buildup, and they didn't go through it, or why Batwoman couldn't marry her lover, which, by the way, Batwoman is lesbian, so yeah.
Yeah, it's all surface level, especially when they're like, oh, we can't like bring up like sexuality in media, despite the fact that we have heterosexual relationships everywhere in media, not just in superhero comics in general.
Yeah, and like the other thing is they keep mentioning like, oh, why are they sexualizing our kids? Like, why are they sexualizing products for kids? Well, for one, yeah, comic books are technically for kids, but one, children are gay, children are bi, children are pan, children are transgender, children are not somehow mythically immune to this like to what is it? They're social. They're like social factors. They're not actual biological things. Like when it comes to sexuality and gender, like those things are not like things that are just suddenly inherent to you. They're social constructs.
Right.
So, what? Superman being bi? How is that sexualizing kids?
Or
Most kids are
not sexualizing, but
sexualizing comic book characters for kids because what? At the end of the day, you're still gonna see Superman beat up Mongol, beat up Doomsday, beat up Lex Luthor, and just because he has a boyfriend isn't gonna change the fact that he's still gonna be beating up the bad guys and saving the day.
overall, and it's this weird need for parents to control like what they learn. It's
It's not even that. In my opinion, they don't really care about kids because let's be honest here, conservatives don't care about kids. Conservatives, I'll say it. Conservatives are very, very predatory about children in general. So this isn't about the kids. This is just another culture war issue that they want to put forth to divert attention from the real issues that they're at fault for, like the mishandling of COVID, the mishandling of vaccine information, the January 6th insurrection, just the frequent and constant posturing of race war that the right pushes with the white genocide conspiracy theory, or the BLM are a bunch of like Marxist rioters that are coming to destroy the country or whatever. It's just another stupid culture war wedge issue, like critical race theory. Like when critical race theory first happened and was in the news, like everyone's like, "Oh my god, critical race theory." Critical race theory has been an academic theory for decades. I learned it when I was in college, and it's not any of the stuff that conservatives were complaining about. But the other aspect of that is who talks about critical race theory now?
because the topic was only popular for like a few months.
Like a month and a half to 2 months maximum. And now no one talks about critical race theory. No one's worried about it. Just like how no one's going to be worried about a bisexual Superman in what, like a month? Like I guarantee you, come December, we're not going to be talking about John Kent being bisexual because it's a manufactured outrage.
And then we're going to have to go through the yearly cycle. The only outrage that repeats every year, which is the war on Christmas.
Yeah. Oh god, that's gonna come up again, and
You brought up December.
I know, but listen, the moral of the story here is this: Superman being bisexual is fine.
It doesn't
It's a
hurt anybody.
yeah, it doesn't.
And I'm pretty sure a lot of people learning about their own sexuality will appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, and also for a lot of people getting their old panties in the twist, it's not even Clark Kent. It's John Kent, his son, that has only been in existence in the comics since 2015. He's a fairly new character, meaning they can explore these aspects of his characters and not be a betrayal. Like, it's not Clark Kent. Clark Kent is canonically a cisgendered Kryptonian that is straight. I don't think that's ever going to change. This is just his son who is a half Kryptonian, half human, that's cisgender and bi, which, once again, come December, no one will talk about. Like, the issue hasn't even come out. I guarantee you, once the issue actually drops, the discourse is dead by the time the issue actually drops. Because let's be honest here, these people don't read comic books. Because if they did read comic books, they would know about all the different forms of LGBT representation, not just in DC, but in Marvel, in Image Comics, or in other independent comics like Invincible, The Walking Dead, the My Little Pony comics, like all these different things. Like, it's irrelevant. It's a wedge culture war issue that conservatives are pushing to distract the American people from real issues that they're normally at fault for. And, well, as a segue to our next topic of stupid culture war issues that conservatives are pushing to distract you, let's talk about the new holiday that people are somehow mad about, Indigenous Peoples Day.
That's right. We have a new holiday, everybody, Indigenous Peoples Day. And guess who's mad about it?
Conservatives.
Yeah. Like, I don't know why they all fall in line for this. So, the last time I've cared about Columbus Day was in second grade. Literally, aside from that, I have never even considered Columbus Day other than, oh no, the bank is closed.
Okay,
Like,
you didn't care about the bank in second grade.
no, I mean, like, now.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm talking about from then onward, when have I ever cared? Like, oh
Yeah.
no, the bank is now closed. I can't cash my paycheck.
Yeah,
Like,
the only reason I was excited for Columbus Day as a kid was no school. I could care less about Christopher Columbus, especially upon learning that Christopher Columbus is a genocidal, racist, sexist, misogynistic rapist that is also really stupid. And not stupid in the sense that, like, he thought the earth was flat. No, no one believed that back then at that period in time. He was stupid in the sense that he wasn't a good explorer.
yeah, like, one myth that circulates is that, like, even though, like, we've got these, like early, I believe, romantic philosophers that were trying to figure out if the earth was flat, and then, which was, like, back in BC, but now that we're in AD, come 1492, and these things come out, like, he thought that the earth was flat.
Yeah, no. Or that he was one of the only people that thought the earth was round. No. The earth being round was a known fact for amongst educated populations, and probably even amongst the peasantry, for about hundreds of years by that point.
Yeah, though we should discuss Christopher Columbus as a figure,
Yeah.
because people are saying, like, oh, he's this figure that we need to remember, and
He's
no.
not. Like, he's deified as he's considered one of the first heroes of the American creation myth. Like, it's in 1490, like, we have, like nursery rhymes. In 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Like, he's deified because he is considered the founder of what would become the United States, and thus, as part of our creation myth, he has to be some noble, like, heroic type figure. When the reality of the situation is, he is a genocidal rapist that even back then, by their standards, was considered extreme. I mean, he had to be reined in by the Spanish monarchy because they were like, what are you doing? What is wrong with you? Why are you doing this? Why are you like this?
Because he pretty much invaded native territory, and then, when he didn't get what he wanted, brought over Native Americans over, and just...
Yeah.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure it, like, catalyzed the transatlantic slave trade.
He was definitely one of the first arbitrators of it, that's for sure. And I mean, also, he wasn't a good sailor. Like, it's a known fact that on one of his many expeditions from Europe to the Americas, he nearly got mutinied because people were like, I don't think this man knows where we're going. He's gonna get us killed. We gotta take over the ship and go back home before we all die.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't considered some type of, like, great person. Even back then, he was considered a bit of a, to be blunt, a fucked up loser.
Yeah. Considering all the facts and the history that we're talking about, what percentage of Republicans as a whole do you think even know about any of this?
I mean, given the current state of American education, I would say a lot of them don't know anything beyond Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue and just Christopher Columbus in 1492 sailed the ocean blue or whatever the fuck it's called. They probably only know that and that he found America. They may even think that, oh, he probably wasn't the first person to find America, but I mean, they don't think of any of the horrific things that he's done.
Because overall, like, to transition into the discourse that's happening now, everyone fell in line. Like, I even had people in my personal life tell me, like, Happy Columbus Day, and I'm like, what are you doing?
It's like,
What are you doing?
it's like, listen, bro. Like, and the other thing about it is that we deify Christopher Columbus. He wasn't even the first European to come to the Americas. That would be someone like Leif Erikson, who, funnily enough, when conservatives talk about like the greatness of their genealogy and their lineage, they talk about the Vikings, but coincidentally, don't bring up the Vikings as the people that actually probably found this place first in terms of Europeans finding this place, as there was already a population here.
Yeah, yeah.
And so people are complaining that Columbus Day is being renamed to Indigenous Peoples Day. Or
And
not even renamed.
not even renamed. Like, I've even heard, like, oh, because Biden proclaimed Indigenous Peoples Day to replace Christopher Columbus Day, that it's destroying American culture and history.
It's like the same people that argue about the Confederate statues. That, oh, they're destroying history. It's like, you want to know what really is destroying history? If books were burned, libraries and museums were just suddenly destroyed.
Because what they don't realize is that, like, holidays and statues don't keep history.
Yeah,
They deify it.
exactly. I mean, let's be honest here. On Columbus Day, do you actually think about Christopher Columbus? Really, like, honestly think about it. When you hear Columbus Day, do you sit there and do you reminisce about the time you learned about Christopher Columbus in first grade? No, you don't. You probably go about your day because he's about as relevant to Americans now as he was to Americans when they first created the holiday Columbus Day.
Yeah.
He's wholly irrelevant. Like, he was around in the 14 and 1500s. We're in the 2000s. Over 500 years later. No one cares.
And also to emphasize that fact, like, going back to what we were talking about with the Superman segment, like, the discourse is dead. Like, we only have, like, the left talking about how much the right freaked out, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean,
The right is not talking about this anymore.
Yeah,
because
it's been like 48 hours.
Because, let's be honest here, they don't care. They only cared for, like, one day just because it was something to get mad at the left.
Yeah, it's another culture war issue that the right pushes to just drive division. And it's stupid because it's not relevant. And to anyone that's listening that feels that these things are important, that Christopher Columbus Day should be maintained, and that things are going too far, I want you to honestly and wholeheartedly think about this. Why is it that you always are told about things that get you angry in this world, and they're always about things that are like social? They're not actually about the material conditions of your life. No one talks about trying to, like, when you listen to Tucker Carlson, he doesn't talk to you about why your current working conditions are bad, why the Amazon warehouse is really just grinding you to the bone. He doesn't talk about that. He doesn't talk about how you've been disenfranchised in a lot of your time when you're voting due to gerrymandering, or due to redlining, or due to just your voting rights being stripped right under your nose. Like the idea of the fact that maybe you couldn't go vote in your state election because you had work, because election day isn't considered a federal holiday. Why doesn't anyone talk about that? Why doesn't anyone talk about how your health insurance for an accident that you received that wasn't your fault weasels its way out of covering you?
Yeah. And
no one talks about that, but they're ready to talk about Superman? Christopher Columbus? Things that are irrelevant and have no actual meaningful material effects on our day-to-day lives? Why is it that they screech at the top of their lungs about that, but not about any real issues? The answer is because they want you to be angry at something that is irrelevant because it distracts you from the real issues in your life. I mean, if they really cared about the real issues in your life, we wouldn't talk about Superman being bisexual because Superman is a fictional character. We wouldn't talk about Christopher Columbus Day and how Christopher Columbus needs to be preserved because Christopher Columbus has been dead for half a century.
Overall, this is just a symptom of the left trying to fix something that is that we view as wrong and we need fixed. And the fact that Biden acknowledged Indigenous Peoples Day is a step in the right direction. And then the right comes in and completely tries to counteract it just for a day, and then it dissipates.
I wouldn't even say it's the left trying to fix something. This is just a normal progression of things. I don't think this is some radical leftist idea of changing the Christopher Columbus Day. I think it's just a normal thing that, it's just a progression of things. As thankfully, due to the proliferation of the internet, people have learned about Christopher Columbus's true nature. That I think it's at this point somewhat common knowledge among some regular people that Christopher Columbus wasn't all that.
Now that you put it like that, nobody really on the left was pushing for this to happen. Biden just did a good thing, and we praised him for it.
Yeah, it's like that discourse last year around Juneteenth. Juneteenth had been a holiday in the South for years.
Was it even? I think it was this year, right?
It was this year and last year.
Oh, right,
because of Trump's rally during Juneteenth that eventually killed Ben Carson.
Oh, don't get me started on that one. I hate that rally so much because I have vivid memories of that rally.
Yeah, but yeah, anyways, it's like Juneteenth. No one talks about Juneteenth anymore. It's a day that is dedicated to the ending of slavery. Well, not just the end of slavery, as in, the end of slavery in America. No, it's actually just specific to the ending of slavery around Texas, as Texas was resilient towards ending slavery.
Yeah. Overall, we're happy that Biden officially recognized that Indigenous Peoples Day as an official holiday, and the fact that conservatives have complained about this for a literal day is extremely funny.
Yeah, it's funny. It's just stupid culture war stuff that honestly isn't relevant, and it's not worth getting mad about. You should really, whenever someone brings these topics up to you as something that you should be mad about, question them. Question why you should be mad about Christopher Columbus no longer getting acknowledged in a holiday. Question why someone tells you about Bisexual Superman and how it's the death of Western society. Really question those people. Really question, because it's not relevant.
Yeah. I do want to bring up an example, because I do want to see you tackle this in that perspective. So I was peering over a relative's shoulder watching Fox News, and there was Tucker Carlson talking about, your children are probably talking about they can't afford housing, and it's a problem, and they whine about it all the time. And you probably acknowledge this. Isn't it they talk about this a lot? Isn't this a fact that we all can acknowledge? And then he goes on and talks, and then is the ultimate finisher to that argument is, know what it is? It's the immigrants coming in and taking your children's potential housing. And I'm we're over here, and then we've completely jumped the shark over there.
I mean, that's not surprising. Tucker Carlson is a white supremacist. He is a white supremacist. He has been acknowledged by neo-Nazi factions and white supremacist factions as being invaluable to their movements as a radicalizing factor. So it does not surprise me that Tucker Carlson will take something like a housing issue and turn it into something to galvanize white white rage.
Yeah, and so that's why I bring that up. Is I want to bring up why do they say the things they do? It's to drive discourse.
Yeah, and it's the immigrants are taking your houses. If you really sit down and think about any of the immigrant discourse that conservative posits around, you'd realize that it's very inconsistent.
And here's the thing: he's addressing an issue that millennial liberals have. What millennial liberal is going to be convinced by his argument? No, this is a topic that was concentrated solely on those people's parents.
Yeah, he focuses specifically on disenfranchised, disengaged white people that are coming under hard times due to the crushing reality that is late stage capitalism. And he's trying to just funnel their anger into non productive and destructive social issues. I mean, it's why he's a phony populist. He uses populist rhetoric to galvanize people for the wrong reasons. I mean, he talks about the housing issue, but he's only using it as a pivot to complain about brown people.
Yeah.
Like, it's like whenever someone does a pivot like that to blame an entire swath of people, you should really, really question it. And yeah, and some may say, oh, but you complained about conservatives earlier. The difference being is that being a conservative is a choice. It is not something inherent to you. But being whatever ethnic group you're a part of is not something you had a choice in. You did not consciously decide the color of your skin when you were born. You did not consciously decide where on the planet you would be born at. Being a conservative, though, is a conscious decision. And so when someone makes a generalization about someone that's describing to an ideology, it's much easier because you can look at the tenets of an ideology, and if someone agrees with it, it's reasonable to assume they agree with X, Y, and Z, as that runs parallel or is in agreement with what they usually believe in.
Right.
So either way,
yeah.
Moral of the story: fuck Tucker Carlson, fuck conservatives, and fuck this entire culture war bullshit.
Yeah. All right. That was a good ending to that session. I do want to have a little mini conversation just to address one thing that I have about the show and to make it easier for editing.
Yeah.
Is that originally last week we only intended to have an hour-long show, and we have one more segment left, and we wanted this week to be an hour and a half, and I think we should just go past it.
Yeah, I think honestly,
because this next segment is pretty big, so I think the idea that us having like an only hour and a half long show, we shouldn't even consider a time limit, because I don't
think we should.
Because I think like most podcasts they can be pretty liberal with how they do their how long they have their show. So
yeah,
I know like you and I behind the scenes have talked about this a lot, but I think we shouldn't even consider it. So
yeah,
let's move.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Because last week we rushed our last segment, so
yeah,
I just want to put that out there so that way we aren't rushing ourselves.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree. I think we should just go as long as we can because, I mean, the topics we talk about are interesting. They are engaging and they can prove to have a lot of discussion potential.
And I don't feel like saving a segment for next week. Because
Yeah.
by then, because what we're talking about now recently came out over the past weekend. We have a lot to say now.
Yeah, and then next week there's going to be a whole bunch of other things we have a lot to talk about.
And so let's move on. So our final segment for today, we're going to be talking about the Facebook whistleblower,
Frances Haugen is her name,
and everything that's been uncovered over the past month. So this spiked in popularity recently because of the 60 Minutes interview that came out, where they talked pretty in depth about the stuff that she uncovered during her time in Facebook, and I believe she worked there for about 2 years up until May.
Yeah, she worked. So she was brought on in 2019, and she specifically requested that she wanted to work in civic integrity. Yeah. That was specifically why where she wanted to work, and that was her condition upon being recruited by Facebook.
Because she wanted to fight misinformation from the beginning.
Yes, because at that point she had already lost a friend to conspiracism.
Yeah. So the big thing that was uncovered is like Facebook does their own internal research to both of their social media sites, being Facebook and Instagram, and they don't do anything about it. It's the big thing that was uncovered, and nobody knew about this up until Francis leaked it all, and we learned a lot from what was uncovered. For example, like it's slipping my mind here. The fact that
the politicians.
Oh, right. The fact that certain like high level accounts, like celebrities, politicians, and stuff like that, get clearanced by their review board about what they say because they've got a system where they monitor certain controversial topics and misinformation, and that was really important for not only COVID but the 2020 election as a whole because like people were spreading misinformation on how to vote, and it's obviously something that should not be done because that hinders someone's right to vote.
Yeah. So, other things we learned was one about the teenage girls that have been negatively affected by Instagram influencers and the algorithm that Instagram pushes to push these influencers and their very, very, very fake bodies that are usually been modified by filters, modified by some type of supplements that they take that are not accessible to the common person, and how it really pushes these images of these very beautiful people and how it really degrades the self-esteem of teenage girls, which they cited in the article. But I would also say teenage boys as well, as there are a whole bunch of like male influencers that have like very jacked muscular bodies or very toned sleek bodies that are definitely very attractive but not realistically attainable or as attainable as the picture looks, because once again they are heavily altered pictures, and usually these influencers and celebrities use like supplements that are probably not available to the general population.
Yeah. In fact, even in their own internal research, Facebook uncovered that on Instagram, they contributed to a lot of teen suicides and eating disorders.
Yeah, which I'm not surprised about. This has actually been something that has been somewhat common knowledge in a lot of academic spaces, that social media is harming teenagers and their self-image due to just the very manufactured nature of the platforms that they're on and how they allow someone to alter the way that they present themselves to the rest of the world. I mean, this was something that happened with Snapchat actually, where some of the Snapchat filters, they altered you subtly enough that you looked different than how you normally looked, but you still looked same enough that people recognized you. Like it would improve, like, it would improve like your nose a little bit.
Maybe like
Or,
alter your cheek structure a bit.
yeah. And some people got used to just looking how they look on the filter, that when they look at their regular self, they see something or someone that just isn't attractive, which isn't true at all. I mean, you're fine the way that you are in terms of your looks, and you don't need these filters to really make you look different than how you are. Because I mean, at the end of the day, when a person sees you in person, it's gonna be yourself. And if someone dates you or like marries you or whatever, they're dating and marrying the person that they're seeing in person, not the one that they're seeing on Instagram.
Right, right.
But that just also goes to show how insidious this is that this is something that is very easy to know and fix, and they're not doing anything about it.
Honestly, it's really disgusting that they know what's going on behind the scenes. Like, for example, for the 2020 election, they pretty much like amplified their filter for the 2020 election for when handling stuff like misinformation. And then as soon as the election was over,
They turned it off.
they returned it back to normal.
Yeah.
And just am internally disgusted by the fact that they are contributing so much to the spread of conspiracism and hatred, and they know it.
And let's just talk about this even more for a bit. This insidiousness is not just, oh, it's misinformation. Some people could pass off as, oh, no one's getting hurt or anything. Wrong. There are real world deaths attributed to this. For example, there is an ongoing genocide of the Muslim population within Myanmar. Myanmar has a very high Buddhist population, and there's a current genocide going on of the Muslim population. That genocide has been perpetuated extensively through Facebook and WhatsApp.
Yeah, what's scary is that it's not even happening alone in the US. Like in places like Myanmar, it's frightening.
Yeah, people are dying. People are dying due to this misinformation that's being spread by Facebook and its affiliated apps.
And in the U.S., like even people contributed to it and contributed to spreading the potential of having like the riots during January 6th, and obviously people got killed because of it. I mean, yeah, it not only happened on Facebook, it happened on places like what was the other one that got shut down?
Parler and Gab,
And it's
but
it's something they could easily stop, and they have the ability to stop it, and they know what's going on their website. And what's the reason why they're not doing any of this? It's because in the research, it was shown that the angrier the people are, the more engaged they are with the platform.
and if they're more engaged, that means there's more ads, and that means more money.
And that's what's motivating their actions. Is
With
that they're not motivated by upholding democracy or making sure that conspiracism doesn't spread. It's the fact that they're motivated by their ads.
Yeah. And one thing that is kind of not known, but being a Facebook filter, like content filter, like manager, like the actual people that do it, is a very traumatizing experience. Like, there's so much gore and violence and very inappropriate videos. And by inappropriate, I mean very predatory and disgusting videos that get shared all across Facebook that content filters see and they try to get rid of, but there's so much they can't get rid of it all. Like, I mean, when you remember when Pornhub had gone through its whole revamp due to the existence of child pornography on the platform, right?
Yeah, I believe that they eliminated like 11 examples there.
Yeah, it was like 11. There's probably more that they got because let's be honest here, Pornhub, there's no verification to uploading it to it, and so it's entirely possible there was more. But in proportion, Facebook has like what, 10,000% more
It
on
was
their platform?
it was at least 6 digits, if I recall.
Yeah, there is so much more on Facebook that doesn't get taken down, which is known. This is known to us. This is known to the public. I can only imagine what the numbers really are due to the internals that they have. There's probably some numbers that Frances Haugen didn't obtain that probably show other horrifying statistics about what Facebook is hiding on their platform and what they're allowing to flourish because they'll make money. Like, I mean, another thing is that in Europe, there are a lot of European politicians that privately complain to Facebook about how the proliferation of conspiracism on the platform has caused them to adopt more far right and conspiratorial policy positions than they normally would be comfortable with. And I mean, if it's happening in Europe, it's happening here. It's happening everywhere because Facebook is near universal. There are 2 billion people that use Facebook according to their analytics. That accounts for about 1/4 of the world's population. 1/4 of the world's population is on Facebook, according to their analytics. That means that 1/4 of the population has the potential to be exposed to horrifying amounts of misinformation that are literally destroying countries and causing genocides.
Yeah.
That is something that is absolutely horrifying to really confront, that the social media app Facebook that you use to say happy birthday and keep in contact with your friends and family from years past is also contributing to some of the worst atrocities that we're seeing. I mean, what was it? There was drug cartels in Mexico that were recruiting and training hitmen through Facebook.
Yeah.
And I mean, drug cartels are not to be messed with. They're dangerous organizations. And their hitmen are notorious for being brutally efficient and very, very capable of causing massive harm to their targets and their targets' loved ones.
And Facebook did none of that and nothing about it. And all in all, just everything that was uncovered thanks to Frances Haugen, like, prompts to her. She is incredibly brave coming out against this billion-dollar social media corporation.
I mean, we're lucky that the current standards within the SEC allows for her to be protected for leaking those documents, as
Yeah.
she leaked them to the SEC. So it allows her to be safe, and thank God for that. But really props to her because she honestly is doing a great service to not just us as Americans, but to the world because this information affects everyone across the planet.
And if you guys do want to learn about this, we'd highly recommend you look at the Facebook files on Wall Street Journal, because that's where we learned a lot of what we talked about today.
Yeah, that's where the story initially broke, and you can listen to it. You don't actually have to read it. You can listen to it in audio form. I would also recommend watching the 60 Minutes interview, as that is also really enlightening as well.
Right. Those two primary sources were really helpful in organizing our information for this segment, and
Another good source to watch is John Oliver's most recent segment about Facebook misinformation that's going on because he focused specifically on the foreign misinformation that's happening in foreign countries because
or
unlike in America, Facebook is synonymous with the internet in a lot of different countries because Facebook makes deals with internet service providers in these countries that Facebook basically becomes the default. It comes pre-downloaded on a lot of phones. Like when people want to go on Facebook, when people want to go on the internet, they just go on Facebook. WhatsApp is also really popular, which is a Facebook affiliated app. And a lot of people use WhatsApp as their main texting app because texting through normal messaging services in other countries is extremely expensive. Meanwhile, WhatsApp is free. And not only is it free, like you get to communicate with people around the world and you get to communicate with an innumerable amounts of friends and families. Like WhatsApp group chats are massive. Like they are really massive. Same with Facebook Messenger group chats. They're absolutely massive. And so they allow you to connect with a whole bunch of people, which is great. It's great for people in foreign countries because it allows them to connect with family abroad. It allows them to properly advertise businesses. It allows them a cheap and what it's supposed to be a very cheap and fun way to explore the internet when you don't have the proper resources due to it being expensive in other arenas. Problem being though is that not only does Facebook proliferate a lot of misinformation, it's more so for foreign countries. For example, there's a lot of like vaccine fact checking that's being done here in America. That same fact checking is not applied to countries like Vietnam, where the fact checkers that are supposed to be doing their jobs on Facebook don't focus on it because it's not spoken in English, which is terrible because, like I said, 2 billion people have access to Facebook. That's a quarter of the world's population. Most people in the world don't speak English as their first language. So having misinformation proliferate because your fact checkers don't care for non English speaking countries is terrible. That's probably why things like the genocide going on in Myanmar that's happening is going so like happening so much across Facebook because the fact checkers they don't speak the language that's spoken there. I don't know exactly the official language of Myanmar. I'll look it up, but it's not a primarily English speaking country from what I know. So I can
yeah.
imagine the fact checkers do not care about it as much, which is terrible.
Overall, one thing I want to wrap up this topic with is that considering that Facebook is mostly popular with older generations and the fact that
Burmese is the official language of
okay,
the Burmese is the official language of Myanmar, which makes sense because prior to being called Myanmar, it was called Burma.
okay, but to continue what I was saying,
Yeah.
like Facebook is much more popular with older generations, and younger generations tend to stay away from Facebook. Do you think that with most people on the left learning about this, do you think Facebook can rectify its image to younger generations? Because let's face the fact that they want younger generations to come onto Facebook because they are afraid of missing out on a whole generation of people to sign up, and that's a whole generation of not making ads. Do you think that their image is uh, repairable to those younger generations?
My answer is simply yeah, because when you think about it, Facebook is nearly a necessity for a lot of people. I know that when I was in college, my dorm, like the floor for my dorm, had a Facebook group, and that was the only way you would know about any meetings that your RA or peer mentor wanted to host was through the Facebook group. So you had to get a Facebook. I mean, not just that, but dating apps. Apps like Tinder require you to have a Facebook. So if you want to use dating apps, you have to use Tinder. Or, I mean, even if you don't use Facebook, there's Instagram. Instagram is a massively popular app. Or, like I said, in foreign countries outside of America, Facebook is just the cheaper option than trying to get regular internet.
That is fair.
Facebook
Because
and WhatsApp. So,
for every person on the young side that's not using Facebook, most of them probably do have an Instagram.
yeah, but the thing is that I don't think the younger generation is at any risk of using it less. In fact, I think they use it more because the younger generation is more tech literate. I think Facebook, I mean, it's a near necessity for people to really keep up with friends that aren't in their,
Nearby circle.
nearby social circles. So to that, I say, I don't think they really are worrying about younger people as they kind of got them by the balls. I mean, Facebook is like necessary. I mean, we use Facebook for this show. To promote the show, we use Facebook and we use Instagram. And we do that because it's a good way to promote the show, but that also just shows how near universal Facebook is. I mean, there are small businesses in foreign countries and in America that rely on Facebook to advertise, as that's probably one of the only ways for them to actually get proper like business and advertising for free or for a low cost. So I don't think Facebook really is in any worry of losing users.
Yeah. Huh. That is pretty interesting because mostly I come from the perspective like whenever people talk about Facebook, they talk about all the hate and conspiracism that's spread on that website. So, and I'm not one who uses Facebook in my personal life, but it is pretty accurate that a lot of people it's required in personal life.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I didn't have a Facebook until I went to college. And even though I don't use Facebook like too much, I just share memes and I use it for the podcast. The main reason I even have a Facebook is because it makes using dating apps easier. Because you can just connect your Facebook to dating apps, or hell, not just dating apps. You connect your Facebook to Spotify. You can connect your Facebook to Nintendo to make friends over Nintendo Switch Online. Like, just having a Facebook just makes things easier. Like, I mean, I was able to friend a lot of my friends for the Switch through just Facebook because we're friends on Facebook. So I could just go through connecting my Facebook to Nintendo Switch Online and my friends are there. Didn't have to go through the tedious journey of asking them individually, texting them, trying to get their friend code ID. We're friends on Facebook, thus I can be friends with them on Nintendo Switch. And then we get to play Smash or Mario Kart or whatever together. But that just shows you just how universal Facebook is. How in something as wanting to play Mario Kart with your friends on Nintendo Switch Online involves Facebook. That's how universal it is. And that's why I say that they are really in no position to be worried about younger people not using it because it's so ingrained in technological infrastructure. The main thing that they're really worried about is what governments can do. As at the end of the day, Facebook has to has to really work within the confines of the laws of the countries that it operates in.
And give 20 to 30 years, we could see, because I don't see regulation coming to Facebook anytime in the near future, but as society progresses, we could definitely see like laws limiting misinformation, or not limiting misinformation, but requiring like Facebook to have a stronger enforcement of misinformation when it comes to elections.
Yeah, I mean, for as much of a hellhole Twitter is far better at stopping misinformation from spreading.
Because we all saw the headlines like that conservatives were freaking out about uh, people like getting censored for their ideas, even though Twitter just put up little headlines saying, "Hey, this may be misinfo."
Yeah. But I mean, Twitter has actually gone farther than that. Twitter is known for having alt-right bandwaves. Kind of similar to how Reddit occasionally will have alt-right bandwaves of alt-right subreddits. Twitter does the same with accounts. Facebook doesn't do the same thing.
Right.
So not only is it insidious in the fact that Facebook knows these things and is not doing anything about it, it's that the things that we want them to do are achievable because there are other social media platforms that are able to do it better than Facebook. Like Reddit and Twitter have a way better filtering process. I mean, you saw how quickly Twitter was to, censor Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene and whatever for all their misinformation. It took the January 6th, a literal insurrection in the Capitol building, for Facebook to do something about Donald Trump.
Right.
And even then, that was only for what? A day? Before they had to come out with a real decision?
Yeah, they came out with their decision after a day, and then a few months later they revisited it and even said, "Yeah, but we're not letting him back on."
Yeah. And I think that's solely because they know that the pushback for letting him back on would probably be way too much for them.
Right. All in all, just everything that we've learned through Frances, I forgot her name,
Frances Haugen.
Haugen. Everything we've learned from her definitely helps us understand what's going on in the background of Facebook, and we definitely need to understand everything that concerns misinformation and just what they're not doing.
One thing that I also saw was also about how what they're doing is probably even illegal, depending on what they divulge to their shareholders, as it's illegal to withhold this type of information from shareholders.
Right, like you can't lie to them, and even important pieces of info, it's important even like it's illegal to even just hide stuff. Like
Yeah.
you can't lie or hide anything.
Like, it's not even like you can lie by omission or just say, like, oh, it never came up, so I didn't say it. No, that's illegal. So, potentially Facebook is breaking laws, but I highly doubt we're going to see any criminal action taken against Mark Zuckerberg or Facebook as a corporation. But that is another thing that's happening that she exposed, that not only is this stuff immoral, it's disgusting, it's illegal. So, it's morally and legally repugnant. Any more thoughts that you have about Facebook and or social media in regards to how this misinformation has been spreading?
Yeah. All in all, this just makes me even less likely to just consider Facebook as what I use, because I use it very little at this point, but now I just don't even want to touch it.
Yeah, I mean, I only use Facebook to like say happy birthday, send memes, and do work for the podcast. But outside of that, I don't really use Facebook proper. Hell, I haven't even used Instagram that much, unless it's for the podcast, really. And
Yeah.
WhatsApp, I mean, the last time I used WhatsApp, seriously, I was like in high school when I was connecting with international friends that I met on cruises. But, like, yeah.
Yeah.
But I know my experience is not the universal experience, and Facebook is a huge part of many people's lives. And so it needs to be taken seriously by everyone.
All in all, pretty much wraps up our opinions on the Facebook whistleblower.
Yeah.
All in all, I think we had a pretty good show today.
Yeah, I think it was a really good show. We had a very good discussion about Venom and Marvel properties moving forward. We had a good discussion about Dragon Ball Super Superhero.
Before we wrap up, I do want to bring up two things that I really wanted to talk about
Yeah.
in the Venom segment, but I neglected to do so. But so for the people who stuck around up until the end, this is your reward. We get to talk about like two political, I guess, jokes in Venom. One that was done in Venom and one that I just can't stop thinking about.
Okay, what is it?
So let's talk about woke Venom.
Oh my god.
Like that 1 minute joke that happened for just no reason whatsoever, but I absolutely love. So Venom went on this rant about being an alien and how the people like how Eddie Brock wasn't accepting him for who he is. So it was a very easy to understand analogy for how like immigrants are treated when they come in, and it was like I
It's not just about immigrants. It was also about being LGBT. Like, because
it
it's
is
like,
true.
I'm out of the Eddie closet.
Oh my God, how just everything about that was great, and I
Yeah.
loved it. Like,
I really liked it because, one, it's true to Venom as a character, because Venom in the comics is he was him and symbiotes at large were treated pretty terribly. Understandable. Venom originally was a criminal, so yeah. But I mean, in Marvel Comics, I mean, mutants, Inhumans, superheroes in general get treated like dog shit by the civilians of Marvel Comics. I mean, God, what was it? Johnny Storm getting jumped at the beginning of at the beginning of Civil War. Then there's Norman Osborn killing the Queen Skrull during Secret Invasion and prompting like a whole bunch of just xenophobia. The consistent and constant discrimination against mutants, or when Norman Osborn declared war on Asgard. Like, dear God, like
overall,
I liked it, but also I liked it because in the comics, Eddie Brock and Venom have a romantic and sexual relationship.
huh,
They are involved in each other romantically. And so I really did appreciate that because it's a relatively new concept, but I think it really works. And I like that they're playing off of it because that should be a big aspect of Venom and Eddie's relationship is that they connect on each other more than just as best friends. They connect to each other as lovers, and they connect to each other as like partners, which I think is important because I mean you have a symbiotic relationship. I feel that in the context of a two beings that are of equal sentience, capable of understanding social constructs, that a relationship like that would actually just blossom.
yeah. Overall, I love woke Venom, and I want to see more. But to what I really can't stop thinking about
Yeah.
is the implication that the governor of Texas, just on a whim, just because uh, a well-known serial killer, their bodies were found on Rodeo Beach, decides immediately then and there to abolish the abolish the restriction on the death penalty.
Yep.
That was just too funny
And
because
let's be honest here, it was Gavin Newsom. It was definitely Gavin Newsom.
I can't stop thinking about it because it's so nonsensical to what we experience because it wasn't even like a supervillain killed a bunch like a whole town. It was just one serial killer who killed. I don't know if it was like said in the movie, but
I think they did say it in the movie.
like we can assume anywhere from 5 to 10 people. Just because all of his bodies was found in Rodeo Beach, he immediately decides then and there, just for this one serial killer, that from this point forward, the death penalty will continue as normal. It
And
is so
do you know
outside of like it's so outside of reality, and it's too funny.
do you know what's the worst part about that decision? That's how Carnage is released. If they don't lethally inject Cletus Cassidy, Carnage doesn't come out immediately.
Yeah, like it probably would have taken like a because with Eddie Brock, the symbiote doesn't fully like immediately come in. It took him like a day or so.
Or actually, not even the lethal injection. Eddie wouldn't have shown up for Cletus's last words.
That is true. So
Literally, Gavin Newsom created Carnage.
I can't stop thinking about this. Like you saw me freak out when this scene is like, because this was like the only like semi-political part of this movie, and
Yeah.
it was like a blink and you miss it statement, like the news is saying. By the way, the governor of California has abolished the death penalty in the most liberal state in America.
All for this one serial killer who decided he was only going to talk to this one reporter who ended up finding out all of his bodies. But outside of that, like, he's literally like, you know what? This guy needs to die. He's like,
he felt morally compelled to reinstate it.
and honestly,
Despite the fact that probably most of his voter base would wants to wanted the death penalty to be gone.
like, the movie makes it. The movie does not in any way show that there's this massive group of people that are begging for Cletus's death. Cletus is just, he's like another uh
he's just another serial killer.
yeah, I was trying to think of the name of the Candyman, but
Yeah,
I can't remember his
yeah,
name.
that passes. I can't think of it.
Yeah.
But real talk, because I want to keep going with this joke. How much do you think this ruins his election chances in that universe? Do you think this would let him get reelected?
About as bad as the Republican Plankton video,
Oh my god.
where Plankton is explaining why they need to recall Gavin Newsom to SpongeBob, and SpongeBob is completely ignoring him to the very end.
Overall, I just couldn't stop thinking about this.
Oh my god. But the sheer ridiculousness of the governor getting rid of the death penalty
I
to
know
kill this one random serial killer.
I know I talked about how much I couldn't believe that that Carnage couldn't hack into a government database to find out where his girlfriend is, and this took it to a whole nother level.
It really did.
Especially as someone who's politically knowledgeable, like the fact that this was even uttered in a movie that takes place in California. I'm just
It's legitimately just ridiculous. And I
burst out laughing, and almost I almost wish that I didn't, just because it was like you have to be extremely knowledgeable on politics to understand why it was so ridiculous. I
yeah,
was afraid people would think, why is some random dude in the theater laughing
at
at
someone
at,
getting the death penalty.
at someone getting the death penalty, and I'm just sitting here like, this is beyond reality.
Yeah. I mean, in a comic book movie where alien symbiotes exist and you can get transported to another universe due to a crazed sorcerer helping a teenage boy, the thing that really loses you is Gavin Newsom getting rid of the death penalty
Not even
for one random serial killer. And I don't care if it's not Gavin Newsom, I'm calling him Gavin Newsom.
pretty much. Ugh. Like, I need to stop talking. I think that's where we're going to wrap up the show for the night. We've hit the 2-hour mark. And
Yeah.
overall, I think we had a very good show today.
Yeah, it was definitely a good show. I hope you all enjoyed. If you're new, you can find our podcast on the VOD on twitch.tv at the Shiny Sovereign Show. You can find us on Spotify, SoundCloud, and on Google Podcasts under Worldwide Wednesday. And you can follow us on Twitter at podcast www. You can find us on Instagram at Worldwide Wednesday www. You can like our Facebook page. We have a subreddit now as well called Worldwide Wednesday, so you can check that out too. And Worldwide Wednesdays are recorded live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I'm your host, Shiny.
And I'm your host, Sovereign.
And we're signing